On this day, December 5th, 1931, the Cathedral of Christ the Saviour in Moscow is destroyed on the instruction of Stalin. This cathedral had been built, as Tsar Alexander I said, to signify our gratitude to divine providence for saving Russia from the doom that overshadowed her. Initially, it was supposed to be built as a neoclassical cathedral, and it was going to be full of Masonic symbolism. His heir, Nicholas I, didn't like that. He was profoundly orthodox, patriotic, religious, and he disliked the neoclassicism and the Freemasonry of the design. So he got someone else to design something that was going to be based on the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. It took a couple of decades to complete, and when it was completed, Tchaikosvky's 1812 overture was first played in the cathedral. Indeed, it was made for the building's opening, which means one of the greatest pieces of classical music was built for this building. Something interesting to know. After the Bolsheviks had seized control in 1917, they instituted officially state atheism. There was an anti-religious campaign during which many cathedrals, churches, monasteries, convents were destroyed. Many nuns and monks and priests were sent off to the gulags. And something as impressive and as beautiful as the Cathedral of Christ the Saviour, even that wasn't safe. Even St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square wasn't safe. But luckily, someone came along and said, let's not destroy it just yet. So they left it long enough, so by the time the really severe anti-religious campaign had passed, people didn't really have the appetite to get rid of that. So, it was going to be replaced by a building representing the new rather than the old. The Palace of the Soviets, one of the great unbuilt mega builds of the past century. This started out in 1922 when a communist, Sergei Kirov, proposed constructing a new convention center. This was approved, and it took a while for plans to materialize because Russia at that point was broke. It had just gone through civil war, and they had no money to build anything. So, Stalin took over in the mid-20s, and he was the one that wanted to build this new building. Initially, the Cathedral of Christ the Saviour wasn't going to be the place where the Palace of the Soviets was going to be built. Many people within the regime thought that if they destroyed the cathedral, it could cause a backlash. There were certain people within the Bolshevik Party, the Communist Party, that believed it might encourage an anti-Semitic campaign. Other people opposed it because it was a building they thought had historic merit. Just like many other buildings, they're not going to destroy everything. And they were going to build it on the outskirts of Moscow. That was the initial plan. But Stalin decided that he wanted it closer to the Kremlin. Apparently something to do with the views and the vistas and all that sort of thing next to the Moscow River. So this cathedral didn't have very much time. On this day then, 6 months after they made the decision, after most of the ornaments had been torn out, the cathedral was dynamited and it was turned into a pile of rubble. The great cathedral, built to commemorate the Russian victory over Napoleon, was gone. Building the Palace of the Soviets was slow, but it did go ahead. 1937, they were well on the way to building the greatest building in the world. It would have been higher than any skyscraper in the United States, and it would have had more internal space than 7 of the top skyscrapers in America. In 1941, however, this all came to a screeching halt. The Germans had invaded. The last thing that the Soviets could indulge in was building a mega project. Eventually, the steel framing was taken down to be used for defense, for bridges and other things that they needed to do. And once the war had concluded, Stalin was no longer interested in building something as gargantuan as the Palace of the Soviets. He had more pressing things on his mind, such as building nuclear weapons and occupying Eastern Europe and encouraging communism in Asia. He was busy. So, what happened to the site of the cathedral? What happened to that big hole in the ground that used to be its foundation? They opened the world's largest swimming pool. Open air as well, in Moscow. That'll be good for about 4 months of the year at best. And for about 4 months of the year it will be frozen solid, unless they have heating, which I don't think they had. So this seems to be them coping, pretending, oh yes, we didn't mean to have this big hole in the ground right next to the Kremlin. It's the world's biggest open air pool because we're so great. Yeah. And so it remained an open-air swimming pool for many decades. No one attempted to build anything on it. No one attempted to build the Palace of the Soviets. And when communism fell in 1991, there was a chance to do something new. In fact, it had happened the year before, in 1990. The Patriarch of the Russian Church, as well as various other people in Moscow, asked for permission to rebuild the great cathedral. Permission was given. The pool was closed, and the foundation stone was laid. Now, unusually, the government didn't spend any money on this. It was contributions, mostly from Muscovites, but also from people around the world, Orthodox people from around the world, and others. Millions of dollars were raised, and in 1995, the true rebuilding began. It was finished in 2000, consecrated and opened, and now, on the site of the original cathedral, the great new cathedral stands. And it looks, in many ways, like the old cathedral, but it is a little bit different. It has to be. There are some modern touches to it, there are some modern decorations, but on the whole, it is faithful to the original design. And now, on great state occasions, the Russian president, as well as other people, attend Orthodox Mass here at Christmas, Easter and other times. And it has once again become the focus of the Orthodox faith in Moscow, if not Russia. So, some good news for a change. Just because something is destroyed does not mean that it cannot rise again, just as the Cathedral of Christ the Saviour did. Many ways, you could say it's a metaphor for the original Christ, destroyed, dead, and rose again. If you like these videos, comment, subscribe, like, and come back tomorrow for more.